Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the Second Chance Act, responding to the fiscal year 2018 Solicitation for Innovations in Supervision Initiative, Building Capacity to Create Safer Communities webinar. The purpose of this webinar is to review the elements of this solicitation and answer any questions you may have about the application process. My name is Blaine Stum. I am a policy analyst with the Council of State Governments Justice Center, and will be presenting today along with Deanna Hoskins, Senior Policy Advisor at the Bureau of Justice Assistance, U.S. Department of Justice. Thanks to all of you for joining the webinar and to BJA for partnering with us on this presentation. Before getting started, I'd like to briefly talk through a couple of housekeeping items about how the webinar is going to work. Anytime during this webinar, you can ask a question by typing it into the QA panel on the bottom right-hand portion of your screen. This includes both technical and content-related questions. We will try to reply to technical questions in the chat window as we go. For content-related questions, we will keep a running list and address them all at the end of the webinar. We will do our best to get through as many questions as possible. If you encounter technical or audio problems during this webinar, please call WebEx Technical Support at 1-866-229-3239. Also understand that there are some technical issues you may not be able to resolve. For this reason, we are recording the content portion of this webinar and will post it on our website at csgjusticecenter.org/NRRC. We should have the webinar posted online early next week. Once it has been posted, we will email you a link to the recording. Before getting into the introduction, we would like to take a quick poll of who is attending this webinar. A poll question will appear to the right-hand column at the bottom of your WebEx console. Please select the type of organization that you best represent. And we will keep this open for about 10 seconds before closing the poll. All right. I think everybody's had a chance, hopefully everybody had a chance to enter. We appreciate your participation and in these polls as we go along, and we will have at least 2 more polls throughout the time of this webinar. And these are really here to help us gather information about who's attending and sort of what people are looking for in the webinars that we present. And the results are on the screen if you can see them. They are also where the question was first on your right-hand column at the bottom. And it looks like we got quite a few people who are here for Category 1 and Category 2. So the Council of State Governments Justice Center is a nonprofit, nonpartisan membership association of state government officials. We provide practical, nonpartisan advice informed by the best available evidence to all 3 branches of the state governments: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. Within this Justice Center, the National Reentry Resource Center is funded by the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and we provide support to the Second Chance Act grantees and the broader field. The Second Chance Act, which was signed into law in 2008, is the first federal legislation to authorize federal support for reentry programs. Recognizing how complex reentry initiatives are and the importance of integrating research and evidence into those initiatives, the Second Chance Act authorized the creation of the National Reentry Resource Center for Adult and Juvenile Reentry. In 2009, following a competitive process, the CSG Justice Center was selected to launch the National Reentry Resource Center and provide training and technical assistance to all other Second Chance Act grantees. We administer the NRRC in close partnership with BJA. The NRRC website is a great resource for grantees in the field at large. You will find a directory of our latest projects, resources, facts, and trends, and items in the news. Each topic page provides links to recent research and publications and news clips about that subject. The NRRC regularly hosts webinars on a wide variety of topics related to reentry, and all webinars are recorded, archived, and available on our website. You can find these distance learning tools under Resources. Also under Resources, you can find publications. The NRRC is building a large online library of publications related to reentry. To date, there are over 1,200 items in our library. Through the search box on our site, you can access our publications as well as any other publications in the library. The Justice Center is also home to several projects such as the Reentry and Employment Project and the What Works in Reentry Clearinghouse. The Employment Project is rooted in working with business leaders, policymakers, and practitioners across the country working in corrections and workforce to collaborate with the goal of improving reentry and employment outcomes for individuals with criminal histories. The Clearinghouse is a one-stop shop for research on the effectiveness of a wide variety of reentry programs and practices developed in partnership with the Urban Institute. Here's a look at all the awards that have been given in this grant track. In a review of past grants, we have found that 87% of grantees had either a primary focus on training or incorporated training as a component of their grant program. Those grantees providing solely direct service were in the minority. And here's a look at the number of Innovations in Supervision Initiative grants that have been awarded each year, along with the amount of funding awarded since 2012. All told, 44 grantees have been awarded around $27 million since 2012. In addition to the Innovations in Supervision Initiative, the Bureau of Justice Assistance recently posted a solicitation for the Second Chance Act Comprehensive Community-Based Adult Reentry Program for fiscal year 18. The solicitation for that grant program is due by May 1st. The link to that solicitation is provided on this slide for interested parties. Before we get into some of the program overview, requirements, and expectations, we would like to know how many of you have previously applied for a Second Chance Act grant. This could include something like Innovations in Reentry, Juvenile Mentoring Initiative, or the Second Chance Act Reentry Program. As with the first poll, the question should appear on the right side of your WebEx console, and I'll give you about 10 seconds and close the poll. All right, thank you everybody again for participating in these polls. These are very helpful for us and for the Bureau of Justice Assistance. And the results should be coming up in a second. And it looks like a majority of folks have not applied for a Second Chance Act grant previously. So thank you again for your participation in these polls. And now we're going to get into the grant program overview, and I will turn it over to Deanna to provide an overview of the Innovations in Supervision Grant Program.
Thanks, Blaine. The Second Chance Act has supported over $300 million in reentry investments to a variety of initiatives across the country. The Bureau of Justice Assistance administers these grants, including the Innovations in Supervision Program. Within the FY18 solicitation, you will see there are two categories offered. The Innovations in Supervision Initiative provides opportunities to increase community correction agencies' ability to assist in reducing crimes committed by those supervised in the community, Category 1, This includes training and technical assistance to develop a model for probation agencies to partner with other justice agencies in order to further the mutual public safety goals, which is Category 2. Category 1 will be up to 3 awards in the amount of $650,000 each, with the estimated total amount awarded of up to $1.9 million. Category 2, 1 award of up to $2 million. No match is required. BJA expects to make all awards for a 36-month period of performance to begin on or about October 2018. The goal of the Innovation and Supervision Initiative is to improve the capacity and effectiveness of probation and parole agencies, to increase probation and parole success rates, and reduce the number of crimes committed by those under probation and parole supervision.
All right, thank you for that, Deanna. We're going to get into the eligibility for Category 1 and some of the program requirements. So as Deanna noted, there are 2 categories of grants for the solicitation. Eligible applicants for Category 1 grants are states, units of local government, and federally recognized tribal governments as determined by the Secretary of the Interior. BJA welcomes applications under which 2 or more entities would carry out the federal award. However, only 1 entity may be the applicant, as any others proposed must be as sub-recipients or sub-grantees. The applicant must be the entity that would have primary responsibility for carrying out the award and including administering and funding and managing the entire project. The objectives of the Innovations in Supervision Initiative are to reduce recidivism and violent crime in particular, align practices with best and evidence-based practices to focus resources on individuals at high risk of recidivating and at higher risk of committing violence, including using normed and validated risk assessments to inform case management decisions. Establish quality programs to address criminogenic needs and implement with fidelity, and consider responsivity factors when placing people in programs. Incentives and sanctions into supervision process to encourage positive behavior changes. Position supervision officers to be agents of behavior change, including training and communication techniques that promote intrinsic motivation for positive change, and training to understand and respond effectively to the special needs of individuals with mental illnesses and other behavioral health disorders. Implement continuous quality improvement plans that measure outcomes and promote accountability, such as collecting data on short-term outcomes to indicate progress toward recidivism reduction objectives, such as changes in individual attitudes, behaviors, or responsiveness to services, and holding performance management meetings between supervisors and management and staff to discuss data findings, identify areas that need improvement, and reward staff for progress. In addition, the grant objectives include assessing and documenting the process and outcomes of implementing recidivism and violent crime reduction strategies to serve as models for other agencies throughout the nation, and to promote increased collaboration among agencies and officials who work in probation, parole, pretrial, law enforcement, treatment, reentry, and related community corrections fields. Funds can be used to support capacity building activities, including staff training to meet the rehabilitative and supervision needs of the supervision population, assessing and addressing gaps and/or quality of service provision, standardizing new or existing strategies to promote replication and scaling, and developing and implementing performance metrics. For deliverables under Category 1, grantees must provide an action plan consisting of a problem analysis, program and evaluation model, a summary of strategies and intended outcomes, and a research base for proposed strategies. The action plan is envisioned as a product of collaboration among the supervision agency, the research partner, if applicable, and the technical assistance provider. For more information about the required action plan, you can look at page 13 on the solicitation. For analysis and research, grantees are expected to have midterm analysis and research reports at 18 months and a final analysis and research report at the end of the grant cycle. One of the primary components of the Innovations in Supervision Initiative grant program is action research. This slide highlights the practitioner-evaluator partnership. And in comparison to a traditional evaluation, action research is a continuous, cyclical process as opposed to a linear process. It also more fully engages the practitioner of the program or intervention than a traditional evaluation would. Rather than occurring after the event, the research is happening in real time and providing feedback to you so that adjustments can be made as needed along the way. Applicants should include in their proposals a demonstrated understanding of and a plan to utilize the action research approach to assist with unpacking the problem, implementation, and evaluation. Now I will turn it over to Deanna to talk about eligibility, objectives, and conditions for the Category 2 grant.
Thanks, Blaine. Eligibility for Category 2 is entities of a national scope, private and nonprofit organizations, including tribal nonprofits or for-profit organizations, and colleges and universities, both public and private, including tribal institutions of higher education. Category 2 objectives: administer a competitive TTA program to provide assistance to local or state-level probation agencies and their partners to develop and implement innovative and evidence-based strategies to reduce recidivism and crime among supervisees at high risk for committing violence. Administer a selection process in consultation with BJA to select 3 teams comprised of a probation or parole office as the lead, a law enforcement or prosecution office, and a research partner, if applicable, to receive TTA, which demonstrates that the team have the commitment of the necessary partners in need for assistance. Make and administer sub-awards of $500,000 to teams to support implementation. Based on the evidence working with the teams, develop a model and guide for how community correction agencies can effectively work with law enforcement and prosecutor partners to address crime and hold offenders accountable. Also, assist teams to develop and track performance measures and an evaluation strategy. Document implementations, lessons learned. Category 2 objectives. Based on the experience working with the teams, develop a model and guide for how community correction agencies can effectively work with law enforcement and prosecutor partners to address crime and hold offenders accountable. Assist teams to develop and track their performance measures and an evaluation strategy. Again, document the implementation's lessons learned. BJA expects that the TTA provider will develop deliverables in consultation with BJA, and that potential deliverables will include publications, technical assistance plans, reports, webinars, and other resources that meet the priority needs of policymakers and practitioners in this area. Also, the required deliverables are a model and guide for community supervision to partner with law enforcement. We would like to have a toolkit that community supervision can utilize when partnering with their law enforcement and prosecutor agencies to, again, prevent recidivism and violent crime, also to disseminate of the guide out to community correction partners and provide technical assistance that will be available for the Innovation Suite provider to support action research partnership. There is an award special condition withholding of funds for BJA action plan. This only applies to Category 1. Once awarded, each grant award will have in place a special condition withholding all but $200,000. which will allow grantees to establish an action plan within 180 days of receiving final approval of the project's budget from the Office of the Chief Financial Officer. The recipient will not be authorized to obligate, expend, or draw down funds in excess of $200,000 until BJA has reviewed and approved the action plan and a grant adjustment notice has been issued and approved to remove the special condition. The action plan must include completion of a P&I guide that has the following: a description of the problem and the data that led to its identification, a research and evaluation model that identifies the solution to be tested, intended outcomes, and evaluation metrics, including the research base for proposed strategies. An evaluation plan to include ongoing analysis, monitoring, and assessment of the overall project impact. A contract, memorandum of understanding, or other agreement that clearly delineates the roles and responsibilities of the research partner. This document should establish the authority of the research partner to access agency data, interview personnel, and monitor operations that are relevant to the evaluation of the initiative. Letters of commitment from external agencies or organizations that are expected to participate in the project, to the extent that the letters have not already been provided when you apply for the funding. Documentation of executive support and commitment of agency resources for the project, i.e., if there are state applying, your governor, county commissioners, your mayor, someone who has the executive authority to sign off on this project. I'll now turn it back over to Blaine.
All right, so we're going to go through some of the Innovations in Supervision Initiative's grant program sort of solicitation and review guidelines. And first up, we wanted to note that the applications are due on May 1st, and the solicitation is available at the link provided in this webinar slide.
Thanks, Blaine.
With respect to review criteria, those who are reviewing the applications that you send in for this grant initiative will be utilizing these percentages on the chart in this slide. So 10% of the total score will go towards the budget, 5% for the plan for data collection of performance measures, 30% on capabilities and competencies, 40% for project design and implementation, and 15% for description of the issue. For Category 1, there are some additional attachments that you'll need to include along with the project narrative outlining all of the things that were noted in the previous slide. This includes a timeline and project plan, a letter from Community Supervision Agency Executive, a letter from the lead agency, a letter from the research partner if applicable, letters of support from all other key stakeholders who will be working on the grant program, assurance to collect and submit recidivism indicator data, applicant disclosure of pending applications, research and evaluation independence and integrity statements, and disclosure of process related to executive compensation. There are also additional attachments for Category 2 grantees. These include timeline and project plan, letters of support from all other key stakeholders, position descriptions, resumes or curricula vitae, examples of work products, applicant disclosure of pending applications, research and evaluation independence and integrity statements, and disclosure of process related to executive compensation. Now that we've provided you this information, we would like to see how helpful this has been for you so far. In your right-hand column, you'll see another question that asks whether or not you found this webinar helpful. Please respond either strongly disagree, disagree, neutral, agree, or strongly agree. This poll will be open for 10 seconds, and then we will close it and see the results. All right, the poll has ended. Thank you again for everybody who's participating in these polls. And the results should come up here in a minute. And as we're waiting for those results, I'm going to move forward to some resources and important contacts that you'll need as we go forward with the grant program. And it looks like the majority of you found that this webinar has been helpful, so thank you very much for that. With respect to resources, we wanted to provide some websites and documents that we think may be helpful for people who are going to be writing these grants and selecting evidence-based programs and interventions. These websites include the Office of Justice Programs Crime Solutions website, the National Implementation Research Network website, Council of State Government Justice Center's 10-Step Guide to Transforming Probation Departments to Reduce Recidivism, and recommendations for collaborating successfully with academic partners, findings from the Researcher-Practitioner Partnership Study. With respect to contact information, if you have any questions about the process of submitting an application, please contact the grants.gov customer support hotline at 800-518-4726, at the grants.gov website with the link provided on this slide, or through email at support@grants.gov. The grants.gov support hotline operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, except on federal holidays. If you have technical issues while submitting the application that are beyond your control, please contact the National Criminal Justice Reference Service Response Center at 800-851-3420 or via teletypewriter at 301-240-6310 for the hearing impaired, through email at email.grants@ncjrs.gov, or through web chat at the link provided on this slide. NCJRS Response Center hours are 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, and 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the solicitation close date. Now we will move into questions and answer any questions you have regarding the solicitation or the content of this webinar. And Deanna, it looks like we have a question for you. They're asking, are researchers considered a sub-awardee in the budget narrative?
They can be considered a consultant on your project. Yes.
Okay, great. And do they need to have an external research partner?
They don't have to, but because of the actual research and the end product, we highly recommend having someone who can have access to that data, the recidivism data, and has the ability to pull all the information needed to produce that end result report as a deliverable.
Great, thank you. Here's a couple more, it looks like. This one asks, can you give an example of a good problem statement that addresses a problem that somebody might tackle through this solicitation? Something that you think would be useful to people on the webinar.
It's kind of cheating. So a good problem stating for this project would be, if during a gap analysis, you realize that one of the drivers of incarceration in your locality is your probation department with technical violations, that's a good problem statement if you're able to say that 50% of the people returning to prison or incarceration are there because of technical violations through the probation department. That is a good issue to address the policies and procedures that that probation department has in place around violations. And this you can apply to look at those policies, evaluate the current policies, and may even come out to say we need to train our probation officers, we need to address some of our policies to change the procedure so that the individuals can be more successful.
Great, thank you for that. We do have a couple more. We have somebody who has asked, how do you define violent probationers?
So in some jurisdictions, violent probationers are actually identified based on a crime that they've committed that may be considered a violent crime. I know in the jurisdiction I came from, a robbery with a gun would end up being an aggravated robbery. So anything that aggravated was attached to it made it a violent crime around sentencing guidelines. So it can be an individual who's being on supervision for that type of crime, or it may be an individual who has a serious history of violent crimes and currently on probation. Some probation officers actually have a higher level of probation. Again, where I come from, it was called intense supervised probation, and that's where most of those violent offenses and individuals were supervised at.
Okay, great. The next question asks, we have an internal research unit. Would that be appropriate to use under this particular solicitation as opposed to an external partner?
Of course, if you have a research partner, and that's a great question, if you have a research arm of your organization, just making sure that they're going to have access to that sensitive data, because remember, you're calculating the reduction in recidivism, and a lot of times entities, private agencies don't have access. So that's one of your letters of commitment, memorandum of understanding, and actually the commitment of your executive to make sure that you're going to have access to that data, whether it's through the AG's office, the sheriff's office, whoever keeps track of your criminal activity data in your jurisdiction. But you most certainly can use your in-house research partner.
Fantastic. And it looks like we have another question. This one's about Category 2, and they ask, what do you mean by competitive technical assistance program?
So Category 2, what we are seeking is for technical entities to provide technical assistance, and they would actually create a RFP process to be a pass-through to disseminate $500,000 to 3 teams. Teams can be one rural, one urban, one tribe, however it comes out, because those, how you implement in those partnerships around community corrections and prosecutorial agencies and law enforcement will look totally different in those different areas. But whoever wins the entity that gets Category 2 will create a sub-award by creating a competitive process in partnership with BJA to select and put a solicitation like we're doing with the ISI out in the field for the entity to apply. But you're basically going to be a pass-through to give them $500,000 to actually pilot what does community corrections and law enforcement or prosecution office look like in their area, and create a toolkit from it that other entities can pick up and try to adopt and implement some of those strategies in their area.
Great. And I think we have at least 2 more. Looks like one asks, can Category 1 be spent on staff salary?
Sure. If it takes new staff to implement the program, it should not supplement current staff salary. It most certainly can, in whatever the strategy is that you're coming up with, if it's going to take new staff to get it done, or some staff that's already allocated to other projects and will spend some of their time on this project. That was a great question.
All right, and then we also have another Category 1 question. Somebody asked, the solicitation refers to a technical assistance provider. Is that someone at the Bureau?
Actually, CSG, the National Reentry Resource Center for Category 1, is the technical assistance provider. They partner and provide technical assistance to all of Second Chance Act grantees under the various solicitations we disseminate.
And it looks like we have another question. Does the withholding of funds for completion of the action plan usually take 180 days? And does this apply to category? Oh.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Glenn.
Oh, I was going to say, and does this apply to Category 2?
Oh, okay. No, the withholding of funds only apply to Category 1, and it's up to the grantee who will work with the NRRC as CSG as their technical assistance provider to make sure they are including all of the information that is required, that the plan is actually realistic, but it does not, it's up to the grantee, and it's actually completed in sections. So it can take up to 180 days. Of course, some grantees can get it done quicker. And one thing I do like to say to make sure is that actually your P&I guide is really not that hard. You've already utilized most of the information it's asking you for when you apply for the grant and won the solicitation. So you're basically copying and pasting a lot of information into your guide from your actual solicitation.
Great, thank you for that, Deanna. It doesn't look like we have any other questions at the moment. So if folks would like to receive updates on other Second Chance Act solicitations, you can join our distribution list at www.csgjusticecenter.org/subscribe. For more information, please contact info@nationalreentryresourcecenter.org. That concludes the Second Chance Act Responding to Fiscal Year 18 Solicitation for Innovations in Supervision Initiative, Building Capacity to Create Safer Communities webinar. Thank you for joining us today. We will have this webinar posted on our site early next week. Thank you.